Welcome to our Tuesday, March 28, 2017 edition of the Government News Brief. In the news this evening, the ongoing Central Housing and Planning Authority exercises aim to stop illegal occupancy of state reserves, West Demerara Road expansion project on track for scheduled completion, and new tilapia hatchery farming for Region 2. These and other stories when the news returns. Stay tuned. Thank you for staying with us. I am Renetta LaFleur. Here are the details. The Central Housing and Planning Authority, CHNPA, ongoing exercises aims to stop illegal occupancy of state reserves across the country. CHNPA has been working to either remove squatters from reserves or regularize those in unplanned areas. Zanil Williams has the details.
The regularization process, which began in Sophia last year, will soon focus on the East and West Front Road area. Minister within the Ministry of Communities, Valerie Adams-Patterson, says that persons living along the state reserves in these areas will have to relocate.
Right now, Ministry of Public Infrastructure cannot go in there to do any cleaning of those canals. There's no space, not even for the boom of the equipment or the machinery to do any cleaning. Should we regularize, then we are culpable. And I don't want to be a part of that.
Minister Adams-Patterson explains that some residents will have to move. She says environmental and other concerns prevent the regularization of the occupied areas. Meanwhile, meetings have already been held with residents of Sophia, Plantation Great Diamond, and Angois Avenue.
Many of these squatters want us to regularize them in their current state. Some of these areas have serious environmental issues. And I say several times, if we do that, then we are encouraging. So while we want to meet the needs of our people, and we want it to be done in a very peaceful manner, we also have a responsibility to ensure it is done decently and in order.
Last week, Minister Adams-Patterson and staff of the CHNPA held a meeting with residents of Angois Avenue in New Amsterdam, Berbice. The meeting was part of an attempt to regularize that unplanned area. The engagement resulted in the two sides reaching consensus on the way forward. It was decided that residents occupying lands that are not reserved for roadways, drainage canals, and community playgrounds will remain and pay for the land they occupy. However, those residents living on the government reserve were warned that they would have to move. Zanil Williams reporting for the Government News Brief.
The West Demerara Road expansion project is on track for completion within the scheduled time despite some delays. Details from Gabriela Patram.
Progress on the US $46.8 million West Demerara Road expansion project, which began in January 2015, has slowed to facilitate the removal of utility services. Senior Projects Engineer, Ministry of Public Infrastructure, Kester Hines, says the removal of the utility services has been divided into 5 lots.
We had 5 lots, 5 different contractors, subcontractors addressing those. 3 of them would have been completed, and we're still having challenges with 2 completing their works. So those are expected to be completed within a week or 2 time, and basically that would allow for the smooth flow of the road rehab works.
Hines explains that a provisional sum was included in the 2017 budget for the removal of utilities, which is also included in the works contracts. The delays, he says, were due to the utility company not removing their structures in a timely manner.
We have had delays with getting those contracts officialized and getting commencement start in a timely fashion. Of course, there are other interruptions there as it regards to, as I say, the time to get approvals to proceed. So those were the challenges, and of course, because we're relocating sometimes close to the drain, and sometimes there are many cases where you have to break bridges to have those pipes installed. So it takes time, but those are progressing.
Meanwhile, Hines explains that other aspects of the works are near completion, and he's confident that they will be completed by the end of 2017.
We would have completed just about 80% of the regulation course, which is the forest layer for the overlay on the existing surface. And we're just about, I think, 30% of the final layer on the existing surface. We are also in a substantial manner, would have completed preparatory works for the pedestrian sidewalk and the cycle lane.
The West Coast Demerara Road Improvement Project is funded by the government, the Caribbean Development Bank, and the Inter-American Development Bank at a cost of US $46.8 million. For the Government News Brief, Gabrielle Patram.
Tilapia farming will get a shot in the arm with a new hatchery being constructed at the Anna Regina Aquaculture Station in Essequibo. Delicia Haynes tells us more.
There are plans to construct a new hatchery at the Anna Regina Aquaculture Station by the end of August this year. Chief Fisheries Officer of the Ministry of Agriculture, Denzel Roberts, says that this will allow farmers in that region to better access tilapia fingerlings for breeding purposes.
We have two aquaculture stations, one at Monrepo, which is the Sapdiosa Aquaculture Station. That's the main one, and then we have the one at Anna Regina. But because we have seen some more interest in persons in that region requesting fingerlings, we decided to build this hatchery so that we could facilitate the farmers who wish fingerlings there.
The cost for the construction of the hatchery is incorporated in the Fisheries Department's $33.3 million capital expenditure budget for this year. The Ministry of Agriculture Fisheries Department is responsible for ensuring that aquaculture is developed in a sustainable and controlled manner with optimized economic and environmental benefits. Roberts adds that there is currently a challenge with regards to the transportation of fingerlings from one aquaculture station to another. This prompted the need for the new Anna Regina hatchery.
Normally what we would do, we would have to transport it from Monrepo to Essequibo, the fingerlings, and is more or less stress for the fishes, so you could get a high mortality rate, depends on the conditions. So we're hoping to complete that by maybe August. The tenders were out, and I think somebody was already identified by the evaluation committee.
The aquaculture station currently produces tilapia fingerlings on a medium scale and is projected to venture into the breeding of tambaki fish. Private farmers in Region 2 produce the tilapia fish for local business within the region. For the Government News Brief, Delicia Haynes.
A man-made lake is being dug in the central Rupununi Region 9. Find out why in this Neola Damon report.
The savannas can get very dry during the traditional dry season. Livestock, crops, and livelihoods are threatened during this period. To ease the situation, a reservoir is being dug at Napi, one of the villages in central Rupununi. Minister of Natural Resources, Raphael Trotman, who visited the project site on Sunday, explains why this is being done.
We've used the model from the JR Ranch and we're replicating it firstly in central Rupununi, and then another will be done deeper south around a cluster of villages, and there are going to be about 17 wells dug as well.
The land is being prepared so that when it rains in April-May, it will fill the reservoir. The El Nino conditions that extended over a period of 8 months from 2015 into 2016 had severely affected the region and prompt emergency interventions. Tushaw of Napi Village, Walter Henrico, says that the reservoir will also bring relief to the villages of Iowa and Parasharo. He notes that the easy access to water will be beneficial since the villagers engage in traditional farming, hunting, and fishing to sustain themselves.
Remember in 19-something years we used to go and fetch water till at mountain feet. So at this time that we are seeing this project coming up to assist other villages, so especially in the animals and agriculture.
The initiative is a collaboration of the Ministry of Agriculture, Civil Defense Commission, and the Regional Democratic Council. It is part of a long-term solution by the government to address water shortages in the Rupununi, particularly during the dry season. Neola Damon for Government News Brief.
Residents of Oriala are wondering if their land titling is worth the paper it is printed on. Gabriela Patram tells us why.
The residents of Oriala are calling on government to look into the legitimacy of the land title document they received under the previous administration. The community recently received a letter from the Guyana Lands and Surveys Commission informing them that there are no records of the village being surveyed for demarcation. Tushaw David Henry says that the land issue is significantly affecting the livelihood of the residents who depend on logging to sustain their families.
We have, just to begin with, our land problem. Our workers had harvested logs at our southern boundary, and those logs were detained for over a year, and they deteriorated. Forestry released those logs, but they still hold back 35%. When these issues cleared up, then we will be giving back the 35%.
Minister of Indigenous Peoples Affairs, Sidney Allicock, and a team visited the community over the weekend to listen to the concerns of the residents. The minister is promising that representation will be made on the community's behalf to address the issue of the land title.
We are going to continue to work with this to show and see how fast we could get this up on what could possibly happen to rectify this matter. But don't give up on it. As you have been doing, keep in touch, and I think we have a counselor who knows about the readings and found all the marks and so on, which is very good. If we could have that, then we could be able to work on it.
The residents are also asking for an audit of the books at the village council. They claim that village funds and other resources are being misused. Minister Allicock says that the ministry is in the process of auditing all 215 hinterland communities and villages. However, due to the limited number of qualified persons to conduct audits, the process is taking some time. Meanwhile, the residents are calling for the development of its human resources in order to fully tap into the rich resources available within the community. They are also asking for a community secondary school and to be part of the consultative process on the review of the Amerindian Act of 2006. For the Government News Brief, Gabriela Patram.
This has been another edition of the Government News Brief. The details of these and other stories can be found on GENA's website. We encourage you to subscribe to our website and YouTube channel. You can also like and follow us on Facebook to be updated as the news unfolds. Do join us again tomorrow for another edition of the Government News Brief. I am Renetta LaFleur. Have a great evening.